How can we be sure about anything? I mean, really, truly certain. It's a question that has kept philosophers and prophets up at night for thousands of years. Today, we're going to dive into a text that tackles this exact quest for certainty, looking right at that fascinating intersection where faith and reason meet.
So this is the big one, right? This is the question at the very heart of it all. How do we know what we know? And is it ever possible to be 100% sure? This is the foundation for pretty much all philosophy and all faith. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down today. We've got 3 parts. First, we're going to look at the absolute basic building blocks of how we think. Then, we'll go searching for where our knowledge actually comes from. And finally, we'll get into the ultimate test, how to figure out what's true and what really matters.
Okay, first things first. We have to talk about the tools we think with. And those tools are concepts. Before we can even begin to talk about what knowledge is, we have to understand the words and ideas that make it possible in the first place.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Every single idea you've ever had is built out of concepts. And our source text makes this really fascinating point. It argues that both philosophy and religion are at their core in the business of creating these huge conceptual frameworks that literally shape the reality we live in.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This slide shows this incredible parallel. You've got the philosopher, right? Someone who wrestles with the universe to come up with brand new concepts, like Plato's idea or Descartes' substance. But then you have the prophet, who also introduces a revolutionary new framework for seeing the world. Our source argues that they're both, in a way, architects of meaning. They fundamentally change how we see everything.
And here are just a few powerful examples from the religious tradition that our source text focuses on. You see, concepts like God, revelation, or the hereafter, these aren't just vocabulary words. They're the absolute foundational pillars that build an entire reality, defining purpose, morality, and the very meaning of life for millions, even billions of people.
Okay, so if all our thoughts are built out of these concepts, where do we get them from? Where does the information actually originate? That brings us to part 2, the search for a source.
Now, this whole conversation has a name in philosophy. It's called epistemology. And at the center of it is what they call the subject-object problem, which sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. How can I, this conscious mind, the subject, know anything for sure about the world out there, the object?
So philosophers have a few major theories on this. You've got the rationalists, who say true knowledge comes from pure logic and reason. Then you have the empiricists, who argue, no, it's all about what our senses tell us, what we can see, touch, and experience. And then there are the intuitionists, who believe some knowledge just hits you. It's a direct insight, a gut feeling that skips right past reason and experience.
But the religious perspective our source details offers a totally different model. It's presented as a hierarchy, a ladder. And what's brilliant here is that it's not a competition between these sources, it's a collaboration. So at the very bottom, you have your senses giving you raw data. That data gets organized into experience. Then your reason analyzes that experience to form principles. Above that, you have intuition. And at the very top, you have revelation. Each step builds on the one below it, working together.
And this is the key takeaway here. The whole system is designed to work in harmony. According to the argument in our source material, a higher source of knowledge, like revelation, is never going to ask you to believe something that your senses and your logic tell you is flat out impossible. It might go beyond what you can reason out, for sure, but it's not supposed to go against it.
All right, so we have our concepts and we have our sources. But how do we actually grade the knowledge we get? How do we sort the solid gold truth from simple opinion, or worse, from complete delusion? This is where we get into the idea of value.
So the source text draws a really sharp line between two kinds of doubt. On one hand, you have skepticism, which basically throws its hands up and says, we can't know anything for sure, so why bother? Doubt is the end of the road. But then you have methodical doubt. This is completely different. It uses doubt like a tool, like a fire, to burn away everything that's uncertain, just to see what, if anything, is left standing. That thing that survives the fire, that's your bedrock of certainty.
Of course, the debate is way bigger than that. You've got dogmatists who are absolutely sure that truth can be known. Then you've got relativists who say truth is just a matter of perspective. What's true for you isn't true for me. Pragmatists say, look, who cares about absolute truth? The only truth that matters is what works. And finally, positivists argue that if you can't prove it in a lab, it's not really true. Each one of these completely changes the way you see the world.
The religious perspective in our text offers a sharp contrast to all of that.
and it's summarized beautifully in this quote. It establishes a fundamental difference. Human knowledge, no matter how brilliant, is always going to be limited and relative. It exists in contrast to a divine knowledge which is seen as absolute and complete.
And this leads to a really fascinating system for classifying information, detailed in our source. Think of it like 3 tiers. At the very top, you have ilim. This is certain, reliable, valid knowledge. Below that is zan, which is basically conjecture or opinion. It's an educated guess. It might be right, but it lacks that bedrock of certainty. And at the bottom, you have kuruntu, which is just pure delusion, worthless falsehoods. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a practical filter for evaluating the information you come across every single day. So, let's be crystal clear about something. This framework is not a rejection of science or human reason. Not at all. The argument here is that the knowledge we gain from our senses, from our experiences, from our intellect, it's all valid and absolutely essential. It's just understood as one piece of a much, much larger puzzle. Human knowledge is a vital piece, but it's not the whole picture.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most provocative thought to leave you with. What if the real path to certainty isn't found in claiming we know everything, but in humbly admitting what we don't? Is it possible that acknowledging the limits of our own understanding is the very first step to opening a door to knowledge from a source beyond ourselves? Thank you so much for joining this exploration.